Welcome back, everyone, to the Horror Master YouTube channel. And now we're on day 2 of my 31 Days of Horror series, where I rank 8 different horror movie franchises, movies, from the worst of the worst to the best of the best. If you have yet to see my latest video on day 1 of Child's Play, I'm going to put a link probably somewhere in any one of these corners, depending on how I edit this. But of course, leading to the title, where of course we're doing a really underrated franchise that a lot of people don't talk about, and it has lately been in the talks for of a certain film that we're going to talk about later. Of course, I'm talking about the one, the only, Candyman. If you dare to say his name 5 times in a mirror, you'll get a special surprise. So my introduction to Candyman, really, it was at the same time, maybe in the mid 2000s, where I was getting more into horror movies, and a friend of mine suggested me to watch Candyman, and I was, you know, invested in this franchise. That I even saw all of the sequels and all that. And then of course with their mimic coming out, of course it made me think of this franchise to do. So enough jibber jabber. Let's get into the ranking. We have 4 films to talk about, a bit shorter than the Talos Play rank them all that I did on my previous video. So I'm gonna try my best to talk a bit more about this franchise. So at number 4, at the bottom of the barrel, we have Candyman 3: Day of the Dead. This was released in 1999. This is the sequel to Candyman 2: Farewell to the Flesh, and it follows up the story of I'm forgetting the fucking name of the fucking actress here. Editing skills, people, at its finest. When we have Caroline, the the daughter of the one in part 2 at the very end. Of course, now being in this, finding out that she's the descendant from the Candyman. So this movie was the first and only movie to be released straight to video, direct to video, which at first that gives you bad signs of red alerts that hoping this movie ain't good. And it had its moments. I'm not saying this is the worst film I have ever seen. I have seen others. Oh, Jason X. But Candyman 3, especially Day of the Dead, me being part of a Mexican American family, Day of the Dead translates to Dia de los Muertos, where you go to the funeral, to the cemetery, and give an offering to the, of course, the ones that passed away. You bring them a little something that they love, they like eating or drinking while they were alive. So that kind of story kind of reflected with me, because I do that every year when I go to a cemetery and visit my grandparents from both my mother and my dad's side. So that kind of captivated me. The only thing that I have to complain about this film was that it's in Los Angeles, and if you know the story well, the story of Candyman started in Chicago, and this is something that I'm gonna say about the other part two, where the story takes place, but they kind of retcon some of the backstory of how Candyman making Candyman for like the third time, fourth time, depending on your point of view. So that kind of was like a big meh. Of course, Tony Todd, Candyman. I mean, one of those perfect roles that he tries his best with what he's giving, and of course, I really like his performance as Candyman. The only way that you could actually kill him now was to burn the paintings he painted while he was alive. So that kind of threw me off, because I thought Candyman died in part 2, which I'll talk about later in a bit. But that kind of threw me off. The acting is okay. The performance I thought could have been better. Production wise, I thought it was meh. Kind of what you get from a direct to video film. Even though at the time in 1999, those kind of movies got the reception. Of course, now with a movie like Prey going to direct to streaming, it changed the fucking game. So given the devil is due, like, again, this was 1999. I gotta cut it some slack, because it wasn't the greatest film that you're gonna watch, but it ain't the worst. But as a curiosity, I suggest you all to just watch it and just say you at least saw it once. At number 3, we have Candyman 2: Farewell to the Flesh. This is the sequel to the original film released in 1995. And the reason I have it a bit number 3 was because they kind of follow the story from part 1. But again, one of the few complaints I'm saying, they changed the story itself, taken in Chicago. Now it's in New Orleans, and I'm like, what? Wasn't the Candyman originally in Chicago? Apparently, in this iteration of the film, in the sequel, they retcon um the story that supposedly Candyman was born um, in New Orleans, and of course that's where he got beaten, murdered, the whole 9 yards. So again, I'm like, really, really, really again to that retcon, but the story overall was kind of interesting. When we, of course, I really enjoy this film. Of course, when we talk about the character of Annie Tarrant, which eventually she found out that she's a descendant of Candyman, who actually gave birth to Caroline, of course, in part 3, and you know, the story of how her love of her life had to see the Candyman being beaten, tortured, covered in honey, cut his arm off. Yeah, it was a really cool stuff to see the love of your life being tortured to that level. Which, of course, with your favorite, with your loved one, you don't want to see that going through. And it kind of humanized a bit the character of Candyman, because when you think of Candyman, you think of this evil, you know, spirit that just wants to kill for the sake of killing when you say his name 5 times in the mirror. But in this film, and also with part 1, it kind of also humanizes a bit the character of Candyman. But I felt that this movie was a bit better. Again, changing the state, the where Candyman was originally from in New Orleans, from Chicago to Los Angeles. I don't know why, what in the hell the production was thinking of doing that, but hey, I guess we'll never know. But a bit better than the Day of the Dead. Of course, we found out there throughout the movie that the only way to kill Candyman for good, or so we thought at the time, was to break the mirror that his love had when he was being murdered, and a piece of his spirit was kind of absorbed into the mirror. So the only way to kill Candyman, you had to break the mirror, and of course, the spirit dies or whatever, or goes to the underworld or whatever, where the hell spirits go in that universe. So not that much gore. Of course, there's some gory parts to it, but again, just for the hell of it, as a movie that I recommend, probably would recommend you just see, you saw it once. At number 2, we have Candyman, the 2021 version. Now, this is a direct sequel to the original, and it kind of, ignores what happened in part 2 and part 3. At first, when this movie was announced, I wasn't really the biggest fan, because I thought it was going to be a remake, and sometimes some remakes are good, some of them are shit. So I had my mixed feelings already starting to do it. But when Jordan Peele was announced as a director, I was like, okay, knowing Jordan Peele, who directed Us, who directed Get Out, who recently directed Nope, I was like, it has to be a good quality film. And I fortunately didn't see it when it came to theaters. I actually saw it maybe, I want to say 2 months, maybe when it was released on digital streaming. And I sat down and watched it, and oh my god, I fucking love the movie. I like the idea that the artist named Anthony is trying to, I guess, go through the history of Chicago, and is trying to find his art style, and he comes across the story with the Candyman, and he gets sucked into the myth. And I like the part when he's taking the pictures of the church, and a bee stings him on on his arm, and as the movie progresses, his arm starts to rotten from the bee sting, and you kind of were figuring out this is him. He's gonna be turning into Candyman. Not only that, I like the fact that they actually made the lore even better. That it wasn't just a Candyman. There were a variety of candy men throughout the centuries, throughout the years, and I thought it was a really cool idea. Of course, the mini cameo that Tony Todd at the very end of the film, I thought it was like you had to have Tony Todd at the end of at the movie, because he is the original Candyman. And again, the focus of Candyman, whether you're a child, whether you're an adult, if you say his name 5 times in the mirror, they'll fucking kill you. It's all about putting fear into the hearts of men, into the Chicago area, which I'm thankful that this sequel to the original went back to Chicago, where it originally started the myth and the lore. So I gave high prizes to this film. If you haven't seen it, seriously recommend y'all to watch it. And of course, at number 1, that leaves the original Candyman. When this movie was, I guess, released at the time, it wasn't really well received, because at the time, what was there in terms of horror? Of course, at the time, we still have some good horror films, but horror was kind of going down. And this film that, it didn't have a lot of CGI or special effects. It just went straight to good old classic, special effects, practical effects that anyone can, for $100, maybe $200, can go to a store and make it. Of course, Tony Todd as the Candyman was one of those perfect castings, because I cannot see anybody else besides Tony Todd to be Candyman. I mean, it's one of those. It's like seeing Robert England as Freddy Krueger. You can't see nobody as Freddy Krueger, except for the remake, but that's a different story. But I really enjoyed this film. Again, it humanizes Candyman. That even though he is this evil spirit that wants to haunt um, the minds of people, he is still a kind-hearted. All he wants to do was to be with his love that he unfortunately couldn't spend the rest of his life with when he was killed. Of course, we get the character of Helen, if I remember correctly, that's her name. And I've seen this movie about a dozen times, and it gets better and better and better every time, to the point that it has become probably one of my, maybe, I don't want to say top 10, but maybe top 20 horror films of all time. So that tells you how much I really enjoy this film. Again, it humanizes the Candyman to the point that the ghetto in that place, they're afraid to even say his fucking name. The story behind his, story was amazing. The soundtrack, I always forgot to mention that the soundtrack in all these films has a kind of Christian-like, bigger, larger than life theme, which, knowing the history of Candyman, of course, they're gonna have something that's larger than life, or afterlife, or whatever you want to say it. So I really enjoy this film. And it's a film that I, every year during Halloween time, I always watch, because it's one of those films that you watch and you almost, um you go back and you find something new. Not to mention that the baby in Anthony, which I forgot to mention on the sequel to 2021, is the baby from the original that will later become Candyman in the 2021 version. So again, I like the fact that they kind of tied up that story to the 2021 version. I think that was perfect by Jordan Peele, because like Jordan Peele kind of wants to make his stories make sense, or maybe depending on, you see Nope, but the original Candyman, an underrated classic, an underrated film that doesn't get a lot of talk, and a movie that I suggest anybody who is a huge horror fan to see it over and over again. It's a fun movie, a lot of blood, a lot of creative kills, and again, like I said, if you're dare to say his name 5 times in the mirror, he'll pop out and just snatch you with his fucking hook. And I really, really enjoy the film. And that does it for this video, guys. I hope you guys really enjoy the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do the all show shebang. Don't forget to watch my previous video on my day one of horror, when I ranked all of the Child's Play franchises. And stay tuned for tomorrow's video, where I rank all of the all the Carrie movies, all four of them. You never thought there was gonna be four films, but yeah, there is a fourth film. And I hope you guys will enjoy these videos. Stay safe, everyone. And until next time, stay metal.